Welcome to Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks, a show that provides extraordinary insights for product managers who want to go faster and farther in their product management careers.
Hello, this is JJ Rory, Vice President at Sequent Learning Networks. In our Masters of Product Management podcast, we tap into the experiences of people who work in and around product management to help you learn and grow in your product management career. Anyone who has worked in product management understands the innate cross-functional nature of it. There are many key partners that help us build and support products: technology, sales, marketing, finance, in some cases, supply chain, operations, the list goes on. Many of us in product management work day to day in small, self-directed agile teams focused solely on building and maintaining great products. The relationships among these teams and internal partners is critical to finding innovative solutions, maintaining efficient workflows, and ultimately leading to the product's overall success. One of the most important relationships a product manager has is with his or her technology lead. As a product manager, it's our job to uncover customer problems. It's the job of our technology lead and technology team to help find creative solutions for those problems. The tech lead also helps by managing the rest of the team and setting up the entire team for success. One of the reasons being a great product manager is so difficult is because a person not only has to be great at hard skills, such as process knowledge and technical skills, but they also must be very adept at the softer skills like relationship building. So today's conversation is all about that ever important relationship between the product manager and the technology lead. My guest today to talk with me about this is Blair Winston, Director of Product and Strategy at Hilton, where she oversees a suite of applications that support day-to-day operations for over 60 internal teams and also provides hotel owners and operators with valuable data, reports, and task lists that help them run their properties more efficiently. Blair started her career in strategy consulting with Booz Allen Hamilton, where she primarily supported clients within the Department of Defense. After receiving her MBA at Chicago Booth, she started her career in product management at Hilton. Blair, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So I mentioned in my introduction that the relationship between a product manager and tech lead is critical in product management. So let's set the foundation there before we move further. Why is this relationship so important?
Yes. So as you said, product management and tech are different disciplines, but you work so closely together as one singular Scrum team that you need to operate as a cohesive unit in order to be successful. And there really are several reasons for that. First, the product manager and the tech lead are the senior leaders of that Scrum team. And so their relationship really influences the culture for the entire team and sets the tone. When it's a weak relationship, inevitably the team won't operate as efficiently as possible. But when it's strong, you have the ability to multiply the collective skills of the Scrum team because these two leaders are able to identify and implement frameworks that allow the rest of the team to thrive. We hear all the time about the need to be flexible and adaptive and agile. And when you have two leaders examining a situation from different viewpoints and who are willing to push and challenge each other, the team is much more likely to reap the benefits of the methodology. And it's important, that these two be on the same page, because if you are going to continue to change things on the team, you need to be consistent in your messaging and be able to speak as one voice. Second, thinking a bit more tactically, you are rewarded with a much more accurate roadmap when the product manager loops their tech lead into this conversation. A product manager might look at a set of requirements and create a whole mini model in their head, thinking through various assumptions and outcomes and weighing all these different things. A solutions architect can come in here, look at a set of requirements, and just use their firsthand knowledge of the code base to provide an estimate right then and there. So to that point, when the product manager is keeping the solutions architect in the loop about prioritization, the solutions architect can also point out these factors that product isn't even aware of and make sure that those are taken into account and factored into the roadmap as well. And while those of us, in the tech world understand the benefits of agile over waterfall, you'd be hard pressed to find a company that is fine with the answer, oh, you'll get it when you get it about a new feature. Businesses need forecasts to plan around, and the greater accuracy of your roadmap, the more favorably your business and your users are going to look at your product. And a third benefit to this powerful relationship is the ability to provide checks and balances on one another. There is an inherent aspect to product management that is about taking risk, albeit hopefully calculated risk. And it's a good thing. It makes for better products. But when you incorporate your solutions architect into that decision-making process, they can help you mitigate some of that risk and help you be smarter about what you and the team do and do not take on.
That's great advice. And just for the record, I agree with you. In purely tech worlds, agile is the way to go. I work with a lot of organizations that are still in waterfall because their products dictate it, right? They build a solar panel or a component for an automobile or radiation detection devices, right? So those don't work in terribly iterative ways, but even in waterfall world, this is so important, this relationship. So all of those things you mentioned are so important. So before we move even further, I want to be very clear on what a good relationship looks like. So when we say product manager and tech lead needs to have a great relationship, what does that good relationship look like between those two parties?
Yeah, you make a great point about waterfall. Did not mean to.
Oh, no. Believe me, I understand. In fact, I work with a lot of folks who, again, waterfall works really well for them because of the nature of their industry and their business. And they come to me and say, we need to move to agile. And I say, no, you don't need to move to agile. You may need to improve your processes. But agile isn't the end all be all. For software companies, absolutely. For some companies, it's not. So it's interesting that agile gets a good and a bad reputation in many ways. So sorry, go ahead. So what does a good relationship look like between product manager and tech lead?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, the product manager and the solutions architect or the tech lead need to be able to trust each other and have a strong basis of mutual respect for each other's skill sets and expertise. Both roles are absolutely critical to the success of the product. You cannot succeed without each other. That said, I do think a little tension is a good thing. You should push and challenge each other. The product manager's role is to push to continue to release new features, but the solutions architect needs to fight back against developer burnout and advocate for some of the technical debt and the unsexy back-end work that the user doesn't see. But when you have that respect already in place, the two roles will ultimately land on a happy medium. And to that point, I think it's also important that the product manager and the tech lead be willing to learn from one another and sort of understand each other's worlds. The product manager really should take the time to talk through the details of a requirement and explain the use case in full. As much as possible, it's great to have the solutions architect hear from the user directly, but we know time is a precious resource. It's not always possible for every different requirement. So a product manager needs to have the patience and walk them through the complete picture of the ask so they can design a solution that meets all the different scenarios. Otherwise, you end up as a team delivering a solution that only half meets the original ask, and the dev team's not happy because they don't feel like they were given all of the details that they need to succeed, and the user isn't happy because it doesn't quite fit their use case. So it's just not a good situation all around. Then on the flip side, I do think it's incredibly important for the product managers to have a baseline understanding of how their product looks under the hood. I do not expect product managers to all run out and get developer certifications, but I do consider myself a stronger PM than I was at the start of my career because I've had the privilege of working with several solutions architects who taught me aspects of the code and the architecture along the way, and I paid attention and I spent the time sort of learning how that all works. And I think that actually goes for the sort of the terminology too, because both the product manager and the tech lead end up playing sort of translator roles at some point along the way. A product manager will find themselves in a situation where they need to explain to users why maybe feature X and Y take longer than anticipated to release based on information that their developers and the solutions architect gave to them. And they need to take that information and sort of translate that into words that the end user will be able to understand. On the flip side, the solutions architect is going to be hit with questions from their developers about different requirements mid-sprint. And so they need to be able to take those business requirements and rephrase them to provide the details and clarifications to their developers. Being able to speak in the same language to each other between the product manager and the solutions architect, I think makes for an easier relationship as well. When you can have a conversation with someone where the PM is understanding the technical terminology being used and the solutions architect can understand the industry lingo, it just makes for a more fluid conversation rather than pausing every minute saying, hey, hold on, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by this? I think it's incredibly important that when you're having those conversations, everyone is on the same page. But if you invest the time learning each other's worlds and terminology up front, you're able to do that more seamlessly.
Yeah, that's such a great way to say it. I think it's really important what you mentioned about the translation, right? I think that's so important that the product manager translates the market and the customers in a way that the solutions architect, the technology team, sees the full picture. That was a really important point that you make because, just requirements or features, they don't get the understanding. They don't get the core need they're trying to solve. And engineers are problem solvers, right? They want to know what benefit their solutions are going to have. So I think that's really important. And on the flip side, I think that's true. I also am not a technical person by trade or education, but I did learn because it was necessary to work really well with those technology teams. So that's really great advice. So you mentioned some of these, but what are some other key things that you can do to build that relationship with your tech lead if you're a product manager or product leader?
Yeah, so I think as I mentioned, sort of thinking about how you can set yourself up for success in the early days really helps for a more harmonious working relationship later on down the road. I like to over-index on inclusivity in the early months of working together when it comes to inclusion in different meetings so that you can really assist and accelerate that knowledge transfer. As a product manager, I like to attend some of the meetings that I wouldn't maybe necessarily attend every sprint cycle. Things like the development team's design sessions or some of their daily stand-ups. I want to understand what is the structure that the tech lead has put into place for this team, not to necessarily get in there and try and make any changes myself, but just to understand sort of what is the process the team is following so that I can make sure that I'm trying to stay aligned as well. I think sprint retrospectives are especially crucial feedback loops in those early days as you work together and figure out what works and what doesn't for your team. And then on the flip side, I, as a product manager, want to include my solutions architect in as many conversations with users as possible in those early days, just so that they can understand how this product fits into users' lives. What are the pain points we're solving for? Where are we hitting the nail on the head so far, and where are there those opportunities in the future? It's one thing for me to sort of lay that out and explain that in a conversation, but for a solutions architect to hear that firsthand from the user can be that much more powerful. And I think this also loops into including your tech lead in those product strategy discussions early on too. At a basic level, JJ, you mentioned earlier about how the product manager is sort of the what and the why, and the tech lead is the how. But you really do get this better result when everyone is working together to figure out how to meet these problems in the best way. And everyone's able to understand the situation completely and bring ideas to the table, and you have that richer collaboration, which ultimately results in a better end product that better meets the needs of the users.
So, are there any common mistakes you've seen? Either you've made yourself or maybe you see others make that you want the listeners to avoid if at all possible?
Yeah, so I think one big thing to be conscious of as a product manager is that you don't hoard the credit. And I think this is something we hear in the business world in general, but it is something that product managers do need to be more conscious of. And I say that because more often than not, the product manager is more visible to the end user than the tech lead or the dev team as a whole. The nature of the PM role means that you are routinely interacting with users, whether it's through interviews or feedback sessions, product demos, what have you. And obviously, a successful release is a team effort. So it's important that the product manager ensure that the tech lead and really the entire dev team get the credit that they deserve so that they feel valued as well. And this really can be as simple as, maybe you get an email as a product manager from an end user saying, hey, feature X, Y, and Z changed my life. They've helped me in so many ways. They've made this so much easier, what have you. Make sure that your solutions architect sees that or is copied on your response and is getting that well-deserved credit as well. Another thing to be conscious of is you want to have well-defined swim lanes between the product manager and the tech lead on the Scrum team. And in some ways that may seem obvious, like they are very different disciplines. But as I said earlier, on the Scrum team, you are both labeled as team leaders. And while the product manager may or may not have direct reports, the tech lead almost always is going to manage a team of developers, if not additional team members as well. And I think there are ways for a product manager to support the tech lead's team and manage indirectly, but it's really important that you respect your tech lead's managerial authority and not overstep. And that it's not black and white. I can't tell you where to draw that line. That has to be a conversation between these two leaders, and probably one that is revisited over time as your working relationship evolves. But to give an example, I work with an incredibly talented solutions architect today, Rajiv. And when he first joined Hilton, I had already been supporting our product for about 2 years. And I knew that QA and UAT were things that we really struggled with historically. So that was an area where I was able to work directly with members of his team to implement some lessons learned. And I definitely valued his input. He was coming in with fresh eyes and was able to bring some of his experience from past teams and products as well. But it was something where I right off the bat was able to identify the pain point. And it was okay that I was influencing some processes in his area because he was kept in the loop about it. And I knew we were on the same page, so I didn't feel like I was overstepping into his domain too much. But I could see how that could go really poorly if the product manager wasn't being transparent with the solutions architect and was potentially giving that impression of overstepping. I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here, but as important as it is to have those defined swim lanes, you are going to need to speak for each other's areas. And I'm thinking not really within the Scrum team, but more externally throughout your organization. As we said, time is a limited resource. You can not both always be in every meetings. And so I do find myself in situations where I'll be in a meeting and I have to veer slightly into architecture territory because my tech lead isn't present. And that's where I am able to pull from my knowledge of the code base and say, I know what you're asking for, and it's going to take a little bit longer because of these factors. And then similarly, I know my solutions architect at times speaks about our roadmap when questions come up about prioritization or other types of things. And I think we are both comfortable with kind of jumping into each other's areas a little bit because you want to make sure that if people are getting together for a meeting, everyone's getting the maximum value out of that time as possible. No one wants more follow-up meetings just to clarify things that should have been discussed in round one. So I think what's important to be just cognizant of there is that my solutions architect and I do not make promises or commitments for each other's areas. And that's where we have decided to draw the line. We're willing to provide additional information or details, but we're not going to sign the other one up for something because we know we have some of the information, we don't have all of the information.
That's really great advice. You should become a relationship coach. So, any other words of advice or final words of wisdom for product managers out there?
Well, I think just sort of to bring this full circle, we've talked about these different ways that this strong product manager tech lead relationship helps put out the best product possible. But I think the culture aspect is to be underscored here. When you invest the time in this relationship up front, it really does pay off in dividends for your whole team. And we see so much data today about the importance of team culture in really in maintaining a successful workforce. And so, I wanted to do this podcast and provide this information, my experiences, to help make everyone's products more successful. But I think it should not be overlooked the importance of having a more harmonious and fun work environment as well.
Yeah, it's so important. We spend so much time with our work family that these fun, productive relationships are very important. This has just been a great discussion. Thank you so much, Blair Winston, Director of Product and Strategy at Hilton, for joining me and sharing your words of wisdom on this important topic.
Thanks, JJ. It was great talking with you.
And thank you all for joining us on Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks. I am JJ Rory, and I look forward to speaking with you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks. If you'd like to take your career to the next level with additional tools, training, coaching, and books, be sure to visit Sequent Learning Networks at sequentlearning.com.